Are we streaming? Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's the May meeting of the Board of Education. Let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the April minutes of the board, of the monthly board meeting?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the April 21st, 2022 Board of Education meeting minutes.
Can I have a second? Any discussions, comments, edits? No. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item agenda is public comment. You invite the public to comment. Each member of the public has come up to the mic, state their name and their street, and you have 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Maggio, and my address is High Noon Road. 14 months ago, BOE Chair Pesco generated a chart comparing this board's requested fiscal year 22 budget increase to budget requests in neighboring districts. For context in that chart, he related Weston's historical and planned spending to his own preferred visually and mathematically misleading representation of long-term enrollment spending and mill rate changes in those communities. The FOIA record trail shows that he privately forwarded the chart to every BOE and BOF member for their consumption, with the direction that the chart and its contents not be presented publicly during the following evening's BOF public budget meeting to consider the planned spending increases. Every BOE and BOF member followed Chairman Pesco's orders, and that chart remained concealed from public view until just 2 weeks ago. Fortunately, thanks to Superintendent Wallach's commitment to increased transparency and accountability, Weston parents and taxpayers now have the opportunity to consider what Chairman Pesco did not want the public to see. While denied the opportunity to project the chart here tonight, the uncensored chart and unmanipulated data can now be viewed online at the Weston CT Budget Dilemma Facebook page. Without years of research, it would be easy to overlook the misdirection crafted into the design and presentation of the chairman's chart, if not for his express direction not to present during the public BOF meeting. As you are aware, others have made repeated attempts to review the unfiltered data but have been turned down, continuing to raise the question of why the chairman's budget chart was ordered not be presented in the first place. Analysis was sent to each of you by email with invitation for explanatory follow-up. Not a single one of you requested follow-up review, and all further ignored the suggestion that as an alternative to public review and discussion this evening, that deliberation be referred to the BOE monthly finance and curriculum committees. By virtue of your complicity last year in keeping the original chart buried and silence regarding its belated public discussion tonight, you have failed every Weston public school student and Weston resident. It is almost never too late to do the right thing. Weston residents will continue to hold out hope that one of you will step forward and begin to advocate for student interests over political ambition. FOIA requested documents can remain hidden, but declining academic outcomes across schools, grades, and subjects, despite top spending per pupil are beginning to be understood by parents and taxpayers. Lisa Wallach, Jody Saketa, and Dan DeVito are due a vote of gratitude from all of Weston for providing records when requested and full transparency related to this issue. I would ask that you honor my or any Weston taxpayer's request for meetings. And I would like to ask, when would be a convenient time to meet?
Thank you.
Thank you. How can I get a meeting?
A meeting with?
With the subcommittee or the committee?
You're welcome to come to any of the public meetings.
And I appreciate that, as I'm sure every Weston taxpayer appreciates, but to discuss what I just reviewed here tonight.
We heard your comments. If you want a private meeting, you should request it. We typically do not have private meetings. We hold all our meetings in public.
Okay, so I can just email you?
You can email me, yeah.
Okay. I look forward to your response.
Okay.
Hi, Jim Maggio, High Noon Road. What she said, except this is a public comment section. You have in the past had discussions tonight or other times. You also opt not to have discussions. It's simply comments taken. When can a meeting be held, public or private, with enough members of the board who can address the issue that Brenda raised tonight? You can't have.
The board can't meet privately.
Okay.
Members of the board can't meet privately with the public. That's why all these meetings are public and publicly streamed, and minutes are public. I
Okay,
can't.
so when can this be dealt with in public and discussed in open?
We heard your public comment.
Yes.
We're taking them under advisement. And if it's an issue that we feel that is critical in terms of running the district, we'll certainly deal with it in one of our committees or in another public meeting. We heard you. We heard what you said.
Right. And when does the community get to hear what you think of what was said? It's not an answer. Come on.
We're not here to debate.
Discuss.
We're not here to answer questions. We heard you.
Right. And when can the town expect a response to the issue that was raised tonight?
I don't know.
Oh, that's enough, huh? Good night, gentlemen, ladies.
Any more public comment? Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Shercrafts, and I live on 5 Norfield Road. And I just want to tell you, as a new parent that's been with the Weston school system for just a year, I just want to say how much we appreciate the service of everybody on the board and how difficult that is in a time of devoting something extra for the community that you live in and the diverse opinions of people that live in the town. But personally, I want to thank the board for always addressing any questions that I've had personally through these public meetings. I want to thank Superintendent Wallach for getting back to me around questions that I've had. I think the only thing that I've ever have a concern around is health and public safety. You know, very much concerned around the COVID numbers. I appreciated the letter that came out last week, Superintendent Wallach. I do feel it was a good attempt at addressing needs for mitigation, but I think that we could have gone further, you know, with some kids having to miss the prom, you know, kids that are getting sick in school, parents that are losing work. We've had a huge outbreak the last couple of weeks with COVID across all the schools. But I know everyone is doing the very best they can, and I just want to say that we appreciate that, and I know that you do everything as thoughtfully as possible. So thank you, everybody, for your service. We'll continue to show up to support and also question when we have questions. But overall, thank you, everybody, for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Janae Williams, Old Hyde Road. I wasn't going to say anything either, and then I was like, I want to echo what Ellen just said. I appreciate that you guys are not paid for your service and that you're volunteers and you're parents in our community. And I am appreciative of you taking the time, and I know it's a lot of time because now I've started taking the time too, to be of service here. And that's all that I want to say. And I will continue coming. And I want to also say for the record that I have written many letters and they've all been responded to by the board in a timely fashion, for the record.
Thank you. There's no more public comment. Let's move on to new business. We have a consent agenda, new hires, retirements, and resignations.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pesco. The consent agenda is relatively short, but I'd like to go through it. We are very pleased to announce 2 new hires. The first new hire is Julian Desiderio, who will be a social worker at Hurlbut Elementary School, effective the first day of the new school year. We're really very excited about Julian joining the team. This is a new position at Hurlbut. You might recall that we are moving away from the 2 psychologists to a social worker psychologist model. And then the second position is Timothy Tamayanka, who is a math teacher at Weston Middle School. He, again, is joining us for the new school year. It's a new position at Weston Middle School. Very excited about Tim also joining us. Did a fabulous demo lesson, and UConn alum, fellow UConn alum. So welcome, Timothy. Resignations, we have Michael Fish, who is a maintenance mechanic, and he resigned effective May 6th, and we certainly wish Mr. Fish well. And then retirements, we do have 3 retirements, and I first would like to thank them for their service, because collectively we are looking at, a lot of years of service, almost 50 years of service. Connie Clark, who is an English teacher at Weston Middle School, after almost 23 years of service in the district, is retiring. Diana Michelangelo, math teacher at the high school, 18 years of service in the district. Before that, she was at Greenwich High. We certainly wish her well. And Lisa Russo is joining her sister-in-law, Andrea Russo, in retirement. She's the administrative assistant at WIS, and she has worked for almost 16 years in the district, both at the high school and at the intermediate school. Yeah, amazing.
Can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Can I have a second? Okay, thanks, Sharon. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the list is, it's the
Personnel.
contract, yeah. The approval of the contract for non-affiliated employees.
Miss, we have a list of non-affiliated employees. I really don't like the way that sounds, because they're very much a part of our
Right.
of our
We're
district.
talking about whether they're affiliated with the unions or not.
Exactly. And these are, there's a list of the positions: the finance facilities office manager, the technology coordinator, payroll coordinator, vocational specialist, administrative assistant to the superintendent, our BCBA, our behavioral analyst, administrative assistant to the assistant superintendent, accounts payable, accounts receivable, athletic trainer, bookkeeper, administrative assistant to pupil personnel services, data analyst, the food services director, and the nursing supervisor. And the compensation is a 2% increase to their salary, which is in line with the union contract.
Can I have a motion?
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve a general wage increase of 2% for the positions listed here as the
Have a second?
assessment.
These are positions where there's an equivalent position in the union, and so the annual raises are really linked to the union contracts. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the annual instructional update. That was part of the most recent curriculum meeting. Maybe Ken, give an update on that?
Thank you, Tony. We had quite a meeting, quite the discussion, lengthy discussion. It's one of my favorite meetings of the year where we bring all of our curriculum leaders together with the curriculum committee of the board. And that meeting can be found recorded on our YouTube channel. And we will make that more prominent on our website after tonight's meeting so that people can find the report along with that meeting. And, I particularly want to highlight the rich discussion that we had. Each curriculum leader presented information and then received questions, quite interactive with the board. And so tonight, this is the abridged version. Certainly, this past year was, back to in-person learning, full year. We started the year in masks, February 28th. Masks were optional, and we, for the most part, when we look back in each of these curriculum areas, teachers were teaching with their high-yield instructional strategies that they were using prior to the pandemic and at times were not able to do so during the pandemic. So a lot of getting back to the curriculum with fidelity, with those strategies where kids are working in collaborative groups, turning and talking. So I think that's, really, and even though, back in a typical year setting, it was challenging. It was we asked a lot of our curriculum leaders and teachers to help accelerate the learning because, and I'll give you an example. Our curriculum leader for social studies grades 6 through 12 said that kids came in at a different level that they normally see with their public presentation skills or even with discussions and how we build on that. Those are key skills we work on, obviously. So they picked up where the kids were and tried to move them along with those areas. And I think there was a lot of that across all of the disciplines. Now, there are a couple of pages within the annual instructional update that we brought to the attention of the committee. They relate directly to two of our main overarching goals, the math goal that we have and the reading goal. And I draw everyone's attention to that because it's really a one-page summary of what we have worked on as it relates to those two goals. It talks about where we were, where we are now, and where we're heading. And I think if we look, obviously we looked at the numbers all year long, right? And so this was a qualitative look at what were some of the changes. And just for math, highlighting, there were some structural changes that we made. We also made changes within curriculum instruction and assessment. So for example, structurally, new teaming model at the middle school, longer class periods, a math workshop now with that new teaming model. We made some changes at the intermediate school with 2 teacher teams just prior to the pandemic, which we saw some very good results with. But then we had the interruption of the pandemic. We had some staffing shifts where we have now all of our middle school teachers, including our 6th grade teachers, with a higher level of math preparation with a 7 through 12 certification. We've, in terms of the CIL coaching structure with the support of the board, have gone to a SIL dedicated to Hurlbut, where previously it was shared across about 45 teachers, K-5. Well, we dedicated a SIL to that school. initially supported with ESSER funding and now supported this year in the recently passed budget for next year. So we have that, and then obviously at WIS and at the secondary level, we still have sills there. In terms of curriculum, we have done some piloting in kindergarten to enhance that program, and we will be coming to the curriculum committee with an in-depth presentation of a shift we're going to make in curriculum so that it's more developmentally appropriate and I think is at a better pace for those students. Actually, it's a little more accelerated, I think, and will be helpful. But we're going to look in all of the grade levels at the curriculum. We have had Math in Focus in place for a long time, about 10 years. And we're seeing a lot of other resources coming on the market. We also want to look at those and whether that there are some advantages. In terms of intervention, we've added additional SRBI support. We've updated our intervention process across both math and reading. We've created a handbook to really make that systemic all through the district. We didn't necessarily have a true SRBI at the middle school previously. We do now with a dedicated interventionist there. In terms of assessment, data, real critical areas. And I think, with all the data that we've looked at this year, you can see with Dan's help and getting the data in the hands of teachers, we very much have been a system that's shifting culture and using data to inform instruction more so that we've had in the past. So I think those are some highlights really from the math document. I encourage, people who are interested in the public to really search out the report, make it available, and I think those 2 pages really are some good highlighted areas. So that was what I had, and I figured there'd probably be more questions, and we'll do our best to answer those.
I just wanted to say that it is the greatest meeting of the year for anyone listening. If you hadn't seen the video, you really ought to check it out. And if you had concerns about, curriculum as these last couple of years were a struggle, this meeting really is a very exciting time to realize that we have an extraordinary team. And I have to say, it's where the sills really shine, Dr. Craw, they really, really shine, as do you and the others. But I think they really showed that they are 100% on top of the work that they do and the progress that their students are making. So we were impressed.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great meeting to watch because it just shows all the passion that the team brings to their work. The 26-page document here is a lot to go through, but everyone who's interested should go through that. The only thing I would probably add in future years is I think that qualitatively that meeting does a really good job of going through what the goals are, what the accomplishments are, what's been done, what needs to be done in the future. I think that if you could probably enhance that by bringing in some of the data as well. I know we have meetings where we talk about data, but the annual instructional update should be a place where a lot of that comes together. And I think that in future years, we should think about bringing more of the data-driven approach into that discussion. I know the numbers sometimes, it loses a little bit of the flavor of what you want to capture in the annual instructional update, but I think a little bit more data would actually be helpful to enhance the words on the page here as well. Any other comments?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could explain the math workshop at the middle school a little bit more.
Absolutely. And Dan is here to add to this. The math workshop, during one of the class periods every other day, each student for one of the 4 quarters will have some very specific instruction in math to complement what's being done in the classroom, maybe some high interest, some things that we haven't been able to necessarily go into more depth in the regular school year because we're covering all the standards. And there will be time at the end of those class periods for students to get help from their math teacher or even go across the halls to their English, social studies, or science teachers during that time. So they'll each have math 1 quarter, science, English, and social studies 1 quarter each throughout the course of the year with a common set of objectives that'll be focused on.
And I can maybe add just a little more color in terms of the content. So the teachers, and this is in the 4 academic areas, so it's not just math, but English, science, and social studies. The students will have one of their core teachers for an extra class each quarter, and they'll rotate through those 4. This was discussed probably more in depth, I think, at the curriculum committee throughout the course of the year earlier. Math teachers in particular, since that was your question, are really looking to get to some of the lessons that they haven't been able to get to in their regular, normal math class. Things like statistics, some personal finance, money issue type things, and that's what they're working on, developing those with their curriculum instructional leader. But it's basically each subject area the students will get for about 20, 22 days in each quarter, because each quarter is an every other day class.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had, I saw on the chart, this systemized use of Tableau and the increased emphasis that we've made on data analytics. I think for probably a lot of parents watching, they may not quite understand the movements we've made with data analytics and how that relates on like an individualized student basis. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about how these tools will help us track our students?
Absolutely, and I can start again, and Dan, you can jump in. So, we now have been able to put in the hands of teachers the individual student data, much easier format through our use of Tableau. We're able to get the information to the teachers through the curriculum leaders, and they meet at grade level meetings to look at their class as a whole, but also to look within that class at individual students. And what happens then is we may need to provide more support for students based on that data, or we may have to provide some enrichment depending on what the case is, or we may need to also refer to the SRBI process students who need small group support outside of the classroom. We call that Tier 2 intervention. But for parents, there's always going to be a communication when there are needs that are seen for students. And at the conference time, that's also a time where the data is going to be brought in. Periodically this year, we also sent reports home, the MAP, Measure of Academic Progress reports, which gave sort of a fall, winter, and we'll get a spring look at how students are doing. So, Dan, do you want to?
I mean, Ken basically explained it all. The point of the data, the way that we're using it now, the data was always kept in spreadsheets by teachers, but now that we're using Tableau, it's a way to visualize the data for everybody, to make it easier to see and understand, as well as track the students longitudinally so that they can break it down as in-depth as they want to an individual student, or they can raise it all the way up to a district level. So now we have different lenses to view for different trends. So we can track cohorts of students, we can track a graduating class, we can track students moving from one school to the next, and other cohorts. So this gives us a view into the data that we haven't been able to access before.
I looked at this document earlier and I thought, I'm not seeing it right now, but I thought that it showed in math in particular that you have eliminated in middle school the math lab. Is that correct? Or is math lab still happening?
So Math Lab, no, we changed Math Lab to a true SRBI intervention process. The Math Lab was essentially some extra time with the classroom teacher in small groups, but it wasn't a formalized process of identifying students who need the additional support, determining what, the intervention that needs to happen, and then delivering it in small groups in a prescribed manner and collecting the data and following it. It's a more formalized process now through intervention, and it mirrors what we have been doing previously with reading. And it's definitely more effective in terms of monitoring student progress.
Awesome. So that was, the math lab in particular was in middle school. I remember the one group in particular where we weren't quite sure what was going on as far as the data was concerned with math was this year's current freshmen. What specifically, how do they fall into this chart? With what's been addressing that downfall in their score?
Right. That you're talking about the students who were in 8th grade and they were transitioning to the high school, and they maybe not necessarily making the progress we wanted to see on the Smarter Balance assessment or the MAP assessment. We began this year with getting baseline data on where they were in terms of their performance, getting that into the hands of teachers, having the curriculum leaders provide professional development in areas we wanted to focus on. Did a lot of learning walks to look at what was the practice in the classes at the high school. We had information telling us that we needed to be a little more student-centered in terms of our approach, and particularly with students who may need more time with the material. And when we brought in our national consultant to look at this and other issues, there were high-yield instructional strategies we identified we needed to be using in those classes. One of those is identifying patterns and similarities and differences between problems and approaches. That's something that our department teachers saw as a small tweak they could make, and started to make those shifts. And we had I think we had a board meeting where we talked very qualitatively about what those practices were. But in terms of data, we have the fall baseline, we have the winter, and now we're going to be interested to see where are those students come springtime. And that testing is upcoming, the high school level. And I see Julie nodding her head.
Thank you. And I think that probably goes hand in hand then with what Anthony's saying too, just some numbers, just to help.
Yeah, and it's timing, right? I mean, this time of the year, we don't have all of that data, right? The Smarter Balance of data will come out over the summer. The MAP testing data will come out at the end of the school year when we finish our internal testing. And a lot of times what happens is it becomes bifurcated, right? You get half the picture with the qualitative information in May, and then we've provided the October summative assessment report with all the charts and graphs. And I hear, how can we, kind of bring the two together?
No, I get it.
It's a matter of timing.
It could be, yeah, we could think about timing so that these things maybe come together a little bit better. I don't know. Something to think about.
It is something to think about, although I have to say, the meeting is really an instructional update. And I see how it needs to be laid over next to and not separate from the actual data. When we ask the SILs what's working and what's not working, the data tells us one thing, but we're also hearing nuanced things about the actual interaction between the instructors and their students. And that's a very different animal, right? Like, now, can we overlay data and say, well, it clearly isn't working in 5th grade? That's not kind of the nature of the meeting, obviously, and I don't think that's what you were getting at for a minute. But it's we brainstormed as a group, which was fascinating, about multidisciplinary instructional methods and how to cross-pollinate between and among different courses and classes and subjects. And that's hard to measure anytime, right?
I agree.
So it really is about kind of the
Yeah.
nuanced nature and depth of knowledge that they
No,
have
I
in
do,
instruction.
and that's why I said it. As soon as you put numbers, everyone starts focusing on the numbers and not the discussion. That's why it's kind of a fine line. No, that's a good point. Any other questions, comments?
I just have one more. So, this is curriculum and instruction, and I think, instruction is probably 50% of it at least. These two charts lay out a lot about the curriculum. I guess what I'm wondering, in your opinion, with respect to the instructional component, how do we ensure consistency? How are we measuring instructional across all grades? How do we make sure that our children are getting the instructional component that's necessary out of the curricular component? What do the SILs do? How do we measure that?
So you're asking about, so if I have a teacher on one team and,
Yeah.
let's say I have twins, I have a teacher on one team and a teacher on another with two
Yeah, I
kids.
mean, and other factors too. People
How
could
do
be
they
out
have
on
the same
leaves, and
experience?
things
Right,
could
okay.
happen, outside of people's control. But how do we ensure that the children are achieving a level of instructional rigor and fairness?
Right, so that when, and we want to see as kids move from one grade level to the next, that they have those foundational skills regardless of which classroom that they're in. So a lot of that is the structure of the common meeting time and the SIL structure. So let's say you have a long-term substitute. Well, what happens is, a SIL will jump right in with that teacher, and whether it's a new teacher at the beginning of the year or a sub in the middle of the year, they'll jump in and they will do, an orientation and help get them oriented with the curriculum and their curriculum partner, so it's a smooth transition. And that became really hard during the pandemic because we had so many, shifts and leaves and things like that during that time. But during this year, we were able to better manage that and to ensure, look, if, and it's also very hard to find substitutes these days. So having the SILs there to also, provide some collaborative teaching opportunities. But if you look at the structure of the middle school now, where those curriculum partners with the SIL can meet. Nick Torres met with the 6th grade social studies group 13 times this year, and then they also met on their own, but 13 times because we had a teacher shift grades to that, and so you needed to have that facilitator there. So, I mean, I think the glue there is it becomes the SIL. And then also the administration is monitoring and going in, and, in math, for example, we did all those learning walks, and we'd see, the patterns and trends of instruction, which can be expanded out to other disciplines.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
Just want to give just a quick update, or maybe not as quick, as of April. So for the month of April, year-to-date April, we've seen a downward shift to our projected end-of-year projected surplus that we had. We're currently sitting on a surplus of approximately $762,000. Just want to always remind everyone at this point that we have from that 760, we do have to set aside money for our annual ERIP, or for the final payment of ERIP, of $140,000. So technically, the net surplus is approximately $622,000. So there's a few things that we saw this month that accounted for this for the shift. We saw some positive adjustment for salaries. Also saw positive adjustment for benefits. Where we saw the downward shift was in the areas of professional services, property services, other purchase services, supplies and materials, equipment, and revenue. Just to add some more color to all of this, so as of the third quarter, we still had 3 remaining quarters left, right? So at the end of the third quarter, we kind of closed that all for encumbrances, and just to get a better sense of where we were. Of course, things are unanticipated, and we have 3 remaining quarters left, so things are definitely going to come up between now and that point. So of course, we had some services there. In terms of equipment, we have noticed, the technicians did a walkthrough of all our buildings, and we've identified 17 additional smart displays that will need to be replaced. This is in addition to the 17. And this is in addition to the 30 that we have in our current replacement plan for future years. So the approximate cost for that is $56,000. And we did have some other cabinets and so that we had to replace. Another big adjustments that we had for the month of April was a repayment that we have to make for excess cost reimbursement. Last year, we were technically overpaid for excess costs, and so we will need to repay the state for this. Just to add a little bit more color to this entire thing, the total overpayment was approximately $193,000. So typically, the way this works is that if there is any final or any end-of-year adjustment, the adjustment is normally made from our educational stabilization grant, which typically goes to the town. And if there's any difference between what goes to the town or from that portion, the Board of Education would normally chip in. So just want to remind everyone that last year with COVID, everything was a little bit helter-skelter, right? And we really didn't know how things were going. So we made those final adjustments, and we have to do that. We did realize that we do need to make some adjustments or just some in terms of just review processes. So we will be making those adjustments, and we will definitely be informing the board if we do anticipate any downward or any positive or negative adjustments to excess cost reimbursement. So that's really the overall changes that we have month to month. For the remaining 2 months, we may have some additional changes that will come through. One other thing before I forget. Included in April is a prepayment for our contract for financing agreement that we have for some door access controls and overall security apparatus that we have district-wide. That's approximately $45,000 that we will be paying for this year. And the main reason why we're doing that is that we're starting to see some pressures in our expenditures or our budget for next year. So the goal is to try to build as much capacity for FY22-23.
Yeah, the discussion we had in Finance Committee was that to the extent that we have things that are in the budget for next year that we can actually prepay for this year to create some capacity next year, because we're really not, we're kind of concerned about price inflation that we haven't really anticipated. And so to the extent that we can create some capacity for next year, I think it's a smart thing to do. We have $761,000 right now in surplus. But anything that's not, if any expenditure that comes up that's not in the budget, either this year or next year, will come to the board before that money gets spent. And that was the agreement that we made.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So in terms of the overall financial, that is the update, unless we have any questions.
Can you just explain on, you mentioned that there's a refund that, or we're going to be, page 2 at the bottom for the excess cost reimbursement. So you say there that we're going to have to essentially send a check for $60,000, but then under the fiscal year 2021 reminders, it says that there was that we were $208,000 more than budget.
So it's a few things. So when you think of excess costs, so what I have as a reminder here, which is I just wanted to refresh everyone's memory of what it is. But what you're looking at here does not have to do with excess costs. What we received for total excess costs in last fiscal year was over $800,000.
So what is the fiscal year 2021 reminder that says they're not? They look like they're related, but they're not related.
They're not related. This is just to keep the numbers fresh in the board's mind.
Okay, thank you.
That's it on the financials, and for our dental claims, which are paid from our internal services fund, we are trended as expected.
Okay. So we'll have roughly $400,000 at the end of the year.
That is correct.
Yeah.
We're trending a little bit better, but for right now, we'll just say for 21 until we get to the end of the year.
Okay. Before we move to the next one, let's get a motion to approve the April financial update, the April numbers.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the April 22 financial update.
Can I have a second? All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Let's go to fiscal year '23.
This is the approval of the budget, Tony?
Yeah, because we never, we just had the vote, so we need to actually approve the final numbers.
Correct. So the numbers for our operating budget is $56,391,182, which is a 2.4% increase. For our capital expenditure, the net number is 782, but we kind of listed the gross and the net just so that everyone understands. So we have a gross request of $1,097,956, which will be offset by capital savings on the town side or on our side of $315,000 to arrive at a net capital of 786, capital request of $786,956.
You have them in the... Okay, perfect. Just, I think we need to read that as part of the motion. Okay. Go ahead.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year '23 operating budget of...
Bill? Just make sure we get it right.
Yes. I was writing quickly, Phil. $56,391,182. And the capital budget of $786,950, no.
782.
Okay. I had the 956, okay. Amended to $782,956.
Can I have a second? All in favor? All opposed? And thank you, Phil, and everyone else for all of the work in shepherding us through this budget process. Happy it's over.
Yes.
Another quick update on our FY23 budget. So at the last meeting, we did mention that we did get our final rate increases for the state partnership plan. So as I mentioned, we will need additional funding to cover that. I am recommending that we do set aside money in a non-lapse, let me back up a little bit, that we make a request of the Board of Finance to set aside money in our non-lapsing account to cover this increase for next year. Right now, we're looking at an overall increase, a net increase to the Board of Education of $167,950.
We don't need to vote on that.
Nope. This was just for information.
Okay, we have 3 items to go through in terms of tuition rate resets.
Okay, first one up, pre-K tuition. So we're proposing, we're recommending an increase to a few years ago, we did decide that the increase would be pegged to our annual increase. For this year, that's 2.4%, which will give us a rate increase next year, a new pre-K tuition rate of $7,118.
Can I ask a question on that? How does that compare to the other pre-K options in our town?
In terms of rates, so 2 years ago, we did that review.
Yeah, I thought we did. I just wanted to.
We did, and at that time, when we increased our rates, not necessarily only to Weston, not only for Weston, but in our entire Durg A, this rate kind of brought us up to par.
Yeah, we were under at that
We
point.
were under that point, and then we did it. So the plan is going forward that we will peg it, and periodically, we will just do a refresh of the rates and make the necessary adjustment as we see those.
And have we found, and this isn't directly related to your work, Phil, but have we found that figure is prohibitive for families in our town, or is there ever any pushback on those rates? In other words, is there a sense that it's affordable for most in our town?
I have
not gotten any feedback about that being a concern over the last 2 years, so.
And again,
And the only reason I'm asking is, you want options for all families in Weston, not just the ones that can afford it. And I know there are other options at Northfield and around, but I just wanted to see if we ever get any feedback that we're leaving out any, key children in our town. As a community, not just we, the Weston Public School, but is Weston leaving out children?
I have a question related to tuition. Can you just explain? So my son benefited from ALC, so I can tell you the value of having pre-K in Hurlbut. I'd pay twice as much if I had to do it again. Is the program? I have a first grader, and I'm not doing it again. Yeah, definitely not doing it again. Is the concept behind tuition at the 7,000, the classes are pretty much, I think I remember, 50-50 roughly, right? There's half the students have an identified need, and then the other half are through the lottery. Is the tuition at 7,000 at 50% of the class, is that intended to cover the cost of the class? Is it literally half of the expense to run? How is the number...
Per pupil.
Right. Like, how is that number arrived at?
it's a very good question. I'm not sure if I have a straight answer for that one. So when you think about it, right? So you take a step back and you think about it. Are we trying to recoup the cost? Of course, we do our very best to recoup the cost, but that may not necessarily be what ultimately happens. So I just said it's a 50-50 mix, so we do not go in trying to peg it to recoup that at the 50% level. But what you'll find is that historically, we've just had a rate, and as the program has grown, so we've seen where we are recouping the majority of the cost. And we made a request last year for the FY23 budget to add an additional class, just to kind of keep our numbers at that 50-50 level. I will definitely look those numbers up, and as a part of the budget deliberations, or just as a general update, I'll let you know where we are in terms of cost.
And does the state, it might be a question more for Tracy, but does the state require the district to run this pre-K program?
So we are required to begin providing services for special education students at age 3, and it makes sense for us to do that in a model that allows for inclusive opportunities with general education peers, and also provides general education peers with the opportunity to have a preschool program. So yes, through our requirements for initiating services at age 3, they don't dictate the exact model of the program, and models look different in different districts, but we need to be able to meet the needs of our special education students.
Okay. I think that kind of answers the question I had for you, which is, so the concept behind the 50% of the non-identified needs students is to give the students who haven't identified needs essentially a better chance, or an integrated classroom, which is to the benefit of the children. I actually would presume this is the benefit of both sets of children, the ones that have the identified needs and the ones that don't.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not intended necessarily to be revenue neutral, or it's more from an educational value than a cost.
It costs I don't know the number, but it does cost the district, but it does get the students into the system earlier, which I think benefits everyone. But at the end of the day, it does cost the district.
One thing I want to add is that it is also, though, we receive reoccurring grants, right? The IDEA grants.
Right, but that grant, Lisa, is really a very, very small.
Exactly.
does
It's not a great deal of funding, but it does help a little bit as far as some of the cost of the pairs there.
So if somebody were to say, why are we doing this? This is a burden on the budget. It sounds like what Tracy is saying is that we'd have to do something for at least the children who have an identified need. And the way we're doing it is in-house with this.
But,
And even, what you articulated, that it was such a great experience for your child that you would be willing to pay twice as much.
But I'm not having another child.
But also
I think there are broader benefits to the program. Yeah, you're right, we have an obligation to provide special education services beginning at age 3. And to your earlier point about benefits for both the special education peers and the general education peer role models, and being able to help students to acclimate to Hurlbut, which is where most of them end up beginning their elementary career in our district, also has a lot of benefits. So I think it goes beyond that, but it does start with an obligation.
Is there a tipping point financially in which it no longer, I know we've added an extra section for next year, we've budgeted to add an extra section for next year. Where are we as far as filling that section up? Do we have the numbers to do it already? And do we have a wait list again, as you had mentioned? Because I know that.
Yes,
Okay.
and yes.
All right. Anecdotally, I've heard of a lot of people who have kids who are in preschool who are looking for local options, and I think that they're very interested in that. So that being said, at what point in time is there a tipping point where the $7,100 is now, is that going to be the cost for, if we don't have, I guess what I'm trying to say is if we have, let's say 10 kids who have identified special needs, and we have to cover the cost of those 10 children based upon our obligation from the state, and we had in the past another 10 kids, so it was 50-50, what, are we keeping it at 50-50, or what happens if we get, to 20 kids and still 10 kids special needs? Is the $7,000 tuition that we're charging, is that going to cover the preschool cost for the teachers, et cetera, for these kids?
So the short answer to that is no.
Okay.
Right, again, so it's not necessarily, it's the educational service, the goal is to provide the services both to our regular ed students and to students with identified needs. But if I can just piggyback real quick to what happened at the curriculum, that annual update, I think what we heard, or what I heard, was that we did have a lot of the teachers and the curriculum leaders, the SILs, who mentioned that there were a lot of students there that, because they were not a part of our system from that early age, that there was a lot of catching up that needed to do. So I think what I got from that was that the service that we provide, as David just mentioned, is a valued service, for all levels of our students, and it kind of gets them into the system, and it also gets them into West End, right? Not only to get acclimated to Hurlbut, but just in terms of how we structure education and how we deliver education. So that's really, I just wanted to just give that quick plug.
Yeah. I actually am heartened when I hear about waiting lists, because it just, I'd like to see larger and larger cohorts entering the system.
I think I have two other items. The other item that we have, tuition rates for non-residents. That also is pegged to the annual percentage increase. And the other item that we have is rental rates for facility rental and usage, and that is pegged directly to the most recent CPI. And that is it, by the way of updates.
Yeah. The only, the comment, the discussion we had in facilities around rental rates really wasn't, my concern was not around the rental rates, but who is approving the use of our facilities, especially for non-school event, if non-school groups are looking to use our facilities. Who does the request come to? Who approves it? And are they aware of our process and procedures in terms of security and so forth? And that was my biggest concern, that it just wasn't. There was a process for vetting, especially for outside groups.
That's correct. So all requests flows through the business office, and we ultimately make a decision in terms of whether or not we will rent the facility to them. And in terms of security and the handbook, so a few months ago we worked on a handbook. Shout outs to Andrew Galley, who worked very hard in getting that book together. We did get that out to all of our, let's call them our partners, extracurricular partners, and that is actively out. We will give that out to any unaffiliated groups, so to speak, who have not received that handbook, just to ensure that all the policies and procedures are followed.
Yeah, yeah, we are, so on top of safety and security during school hours. I just want to make sure that we also do everything we can to inform people what the safety protocols are when they're using the facilities after hours as well.
Yeah, we knew that that was a concern, so we really worked hard to update it, and I personally delivered it to the First Select Woman's office, and we wanted Parks and Rec to know, but it has things when you talk about security, like, what do you do after hours if someone comes in and you don't know who the person is? Where are the defibrillators? And there's a map of the school, so if there's something happens to someone, how do you access that? It's a pretty thorough electronic and hard copy book. And yes, shout out to Andrew Galley, as well as our athletic director, who we used his first version of it that went to all of the town groups that used the facilities for athletics.
So,
Question, Tony?
oh, go ahead.
Do we promote these spaces as rentable to private groups? And the reason I'm asking is I think they're really cheap. I think they could be much more, I think that renting out the auditorium and stage for $145.
An hour.
That's better.
An hour. An
So
hour.
we said the same thing.
An hour, yeah, okay. No, but I mean, it's a beautiful auditorium and stage. And I'm just wondering if we put any kind of, marketing into it, and whether we have goals. Like, can we make $5,000 this year on the auditorium rental? Do we set goals like that? And if so, is it easy to attract people?
If I can start, and maybe you can jump in. I would be cautious about that for the following reason, and having been at the high school and listened to when people wanted to use the auditorium or different things. It's very complicated, especially there are very few windows, quite frankly, where it would be available. When you're talking about the different theater productions that we put on, the concerts, is the floor put in and the pit is closed up, or how it's set up, and rehearsals, set building, all of that. We have struggles internally to make it work, and that kind of adds to it. The same thing with the gyms and all that. I do not know how they keep it all straight between Dawn Egan, Mr. Unger, Andrew Galley, trying to balance all of the different groups that are vying for this space. There's not really a lot of extra time.
Okay, why don't we start with the pre-K tuition? Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year '23 pre-K tuition rate increase of 2.4% to $7,118.
Have a second? Sharon, all in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. Next one.
Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the 2.4% increase for fiscal year '23 tuition rates for non-residents.
Have a second? Thanks, Taffy. All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion passes. And the last one?
Yes. Move that the Weston Board of Education approve the fiscal year '23 utility and facility rental rates as presented.
Second? Taffy? All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Phil. Next one. I've been waiting for this one all night.
Yeah, never short of words. So the Communications Committee met last month, and one of the things that we had discussed was attendance at the Board of Ed meetings. And we felt, and I think I'm speaking for all the members, correct me if I'm wrong, we felt our number one responsibility was to try and reach as many people in the community as we could. And so, and I've been periodically checking YouTube, so pardon me for a moment. Let me check it as I start speaking to see 14 people. Thank you, Dan. What we kicked around was the concept of going to a hybrid schedule for regular Board of Ed meetings. And the concept was we have far greater turnout when we're remote, even if it's only 13 or 14 people compared to 2 or 3, it's a multiplier. I've received...
Yeah, thanks for coming, ladies. Your enthusiasm is appreciated.
Especially those who stay.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be nice to be at home in your sweats right now?
Right. And, you know, that's a valid point. I don't think that they would not be tuning into us right now. Yeah, but so if
Yeah.
they would still be participating in the
Right.
same way. So, you know, I don't have any, there's nothing that, I'll just throw a couple of things at
Right.
you that we discussed, and I think that if they resonate with the rest of the board, we should consider it. So it was reaching the greatest number of community members, and I think what we saw was during the pandemic, we had a lot more people tuning in than we have show up. It was technology. I think that we spoke to Dan. I think Dan to do what we've been doing, which arguably has not been that great. It just kind of checks the box.
Right.
Was about, I think, a $10,000 or $15,000 investment. Or yeah,
Yeah, it was 15, starting around $15,000 investment.
And that's not adjusted for inflation. Right. So, and then I think we got to the point where if we wanted to have video quality like what people are accustomed to with Zoom, we're talking, I think, around 60 or 65,000. And the communications committee felt spending $15,000 or $17,000 on technology, we should be spending every dollar on educating our children.
Sure.
Then it's just what we're used to in 2022. Every environment now offers some kind of remote capability. It's also probably better use of time for some of the people that are required to be here. But
Right. Absolutely.
so that's, you know, and then Governor Lamont passed a law at the end of April that allows Board of Educations to continue in remote. So the Communications Committee thought that we would come up with a hybrid schedule where it was set one meeting per calendar quarter would be in person. So events or things that needed to take place in person, we knew the date, and the other 2 meetings per calendar quarter would be remote. And
And we'd still, we would be remote, but we would also still have the ability for public comment, as we do here.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be any negative impact as far as the community is concerned. If people want to see us in person, they can still do that every quarter. And in addition to that, there's recognition that, you know, certificates and things
No,
like
absolutely.
that are really important. So we want to make sure that we do have an in-person presence. But the reality is, if we want to maximize our reach, it's best to do it in a hybrid model.
Yeah.
And one more item to add. When we spoke to Dan, how do we engage public comment, you know, better? Because that was one of the issues that the Communication Committee previously kind of tackled, was that the community, I think, has this general feeling during public comment that don't put on your camera, speak quietly, and we'll let you know when it's your turn. And that's not the case at all. It was, I think, just lack of us asking people to turn on their camera, the moving around. So when we spoke to Dan, we thought the best investment, which I think was around $1,200 or $1,500, if we could get the license, would be to utilize what the town utilizes with Zoom, which is the webinar license for Zoom, where you can have essentially everybody come into the Zoom room so that they feel that they're part of the meeting. And then when somebody wants to speak, promote them to a speaker, encourage them to turn on their camera. We can see their, you know, as they speak to us, we can see them, they can see us. And it would mirror more closely what the town of Weston does for meetings.
Yeah. By the way, I think the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance are probably not going to go in person anytime soon.
Yeah, I got that same feeling from a recent watching of one of their meetings.
Yeah.
I can't remember whether you also said this, but I think I always feel for the administrators when we're here in these meetings and they go so late and they're getting up at 6:30 in the morning, and And so I think that's just to pile that on as well.
Yeah, no, I kind of like the idea. It also, if we're meeting once a quarter in person, members of the public who feel like they want to engage with the board in person, they have that opportunity to. I think it's a good compromise. Seems, I don't know, what do others think?
I think it's a good plan. You spoke to the importance of some things being in person, but there's also some presentations that are better virtual when you can do the screen share and the
Absolutely.
person narrating it can be pointing to
Right.
things and
Yeah.
directing you to where they're working. So there's benefits to timing those meetings too.
Yep. What do you think?
I mean, I just remember receiving a lot of email from the public about wanting to have these meetings in person. So how do we know what the general public feels about this? We have a sample size of 2 here, which is
I know
great.
that. I think that's the
Yeah.
the
The
response is that, you know, the real comments that we got about having them in person was that people wanted to be able to be there for public comment. And we don't, you know,
That was also.
proof is
that
in the
was-
pudding.
If you recall, that was.
And thank you for coming.
Their topic in particular, one particular
Right,
topic.
but it's hard to predict what issues are important to the community and what people feel strongly about if you have this set schedule. You know, I don't know, I'd be reluctant to vote yes for this until I had a sense for, you know, that the community had an opportunity to respond to this or write in. I mean, all those folks that wrote letters before,
I think
email me. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Actually, that's a really great idea. If we're going to get some public feedback, the people who are watching this now, live stream, or whether they're watching it on YouTube, to send us emails and let us know if that's something that would work for them, if it's something of interest, and we can take that into consideration, because we're definitely going to have a June meeting in person anyway, because that's when we do a lot of our presentations. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
End of year presentations. So, I don't think it doesn't necessarily have to be agreed upon tonight. This is. really just
You know,
discussion.
I'm all for the idea. I do think the next meeting's going to be in person anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to rush. If we want to get some more feedback on that, it's fine. I do think that if we do this, though, to Melissa's point, is we have to be deliberate about our schedule, right?
Yeah.
We have to plan out our schedule so that those things that, you know, of course, you can never plan exactly, but those things that we think are usually are more attended, maybe we hold those in person.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I just think we just need to be more deliberate if we do this. But, you know, I think it's a good idea.
I think that we considered the people. So I received a lot of emails too initially on people wanting to go back to in person, and quite frankly, it was from a small group of persistent people. And I think what they were looking for wasn't necessarily us being back in person, as the optics of the schools getting back to some level of normalcy.
Yeah.
And I had brought this up previously, where I think the Board of Ed getting back in person around the same time that parent-teacher conferences started to be able to be available in person. I think that the schools are operating almost or at regular, the way they were pre-pandemic. So I think the board coming back together and the people who really wanted us back together, it was more of a desire to see us start a
You're being
Yeah.
kind.
yeah, just to start the ball rolling. And if it's, I received lots of emails from people saying, why is it safe for the kids to go back into the classrooms but not the board? And so it didn't look right. And ultimately, we are back in person, and now that we're back in person, the schools are operating at, I think, near regular.
Yeah.
It's now it's just reaching the community.
I think this is all about reach. I think that's how we have to, that's the only discussion we should be having is about reach. And if we're, and I do believe that we reach more people virtually than we do when we're in person. I think the presentations are just easier for the public to consume when we're remote. But we don't, if we want to get more data, if we want to give whoever's listening an opportunity to give us some feedback on that, that's great. We can vote next month. We're back in person anyway until the end of the year, so. And then, when we have workshops over the course, our workshops or, our, for example, any meeting we have with Tecton is going to be virtual. Our workshops are virtual. So, this is kind of about next year. So let's use this month to give the public an opportunity to weigh in. And then we'll put it on the agenda for next month. How's that? All right? But I think it's a good idea. Let's see. District update.
District update, thank you. One thing I want to point out is if you go to our homepage on the Weston Public Schools, there is a icon that says Superintendent Update. Those are really the district updates. Our principals work very hard to have an update each month, and they're beautifully written with photos. So what I would encourage everyone to click on the Superintendent Update because they're all there, as well as What's Up in the Weston Public Schools, our podcast. And this month we have our beloved music teacher, Lisa Moretti, who is just an outstanding educator at the intermediate school. At this time, I would like to turn it over to the principals to just say a couple of highlights that occurred in both April and May from their buildings. We had a lot going on with Earth Day and recycling and all kinds of things. And as you said, Mr. Felden, we're getting back to normal with visitors into the schools, guest speakers, field trips. Very exciting. Laura Cadis, principal of Hurlbut, take it away.
Okay, Hurlbut is a busy place. Our students have really embraced our green team and our recycling program. I've seen a dramatic difference in during lunches with the students' knowledge and understanding of recycling, and really a dramatic increase. They really embraced that. And it was a really fun project because the students created the videos in class with the teacher to promote it around the building, and hearing from student to student, I think really made a big difference, rather than just the adults saying this is how you should do it, them hearing from their peers. So we had a first grade class that created teaching videos about how to recycle. So ask one of our first graders, or actually any of our students, about recycling. I did want to highlight our makerspace in our library. Our LRC is one of those places where we really do a lot of our interdisciplinary work, and I know that was a topic of interest at the annual instructional update. So one of those examples is through our One School, One Book program. We read one book as a school community. Every staff member and child receives a copy of the book, and we read it as a school community, which really does bring a lot of collaboration and school climate, but it also is a way for us to integrate cross-disciplinary. So in our library, our students were, second grade students were engineers, and they had designed a home for the main character in the book, which they found out after they created it was a bat, and then they went back and had to analyze their designs and adjust them to fit the needs of the bat, and it was a lot of fun. So learning how to be engineers and how to take, dimensions from math and literature that they were reading and to create something in our library was very exciting. So I could go on all night, but I will now pass to my colleague Patty.
Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing, sorry.
Just one more.
Getting back to normal, last week we had our incoming kindergarten tour, which was so much fun. And we had 80 families RSVP, and I think we had, close to double. It was a tremendous turnout and so much fun to show the building. And they took a little bus ride up and down School Road, and there was just so much excitement. And it's going to be a great class. Those kindergartners are ready to come. So lots of fun.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay.
For now.
Oh, yeah. So a couple of things that we obviously spent some great activities on Earth Day as well. But for us, some of the exciting thing that happened last month is we we're able to have our concerts again, in-person concerts. So we had a wonderful both chorus concert one night, and we had an orchestra concert, and it was the excitement was just palpable with the students as well as with the parents. Standing ovation, just to be able to be in person again was really wonderful. So and they're gearing up. We'll be doing a band concert coming up at the end of this month, and then we'll do another chorus concert, another orchestra concert at the very beginning of June. Also, we were able to have an author visit last month. Brian, oh my goodness, I think it's like John Patrick Green. Actually, I was thinking Brian Williams before, but John Patrick Green is the author of Investigators. They're alligators that are investigators. It's a great graphic novel series, and all the students got to cycle through and have a conversation with him, and he was able to share that his love of becoming an illustrator and an author really started when he was really young, like in 3rd grade. And so it was really fascinating. The kids got to ask a lot of questions. They got to see him illustrate, and then they all got a copy of one of his books, courtesy of our PTO. Bought one, so that was really nice. And last, I just want to put a plug in. On Wednesday night, we'll be having a parent presentation for our incoming 3rd grade parents. And I have offered also to finally give tours to our parents. So our 5th grade students, I've asked some 5th grade students to be our tour guides, and they'll be doing that from 6:30 to 7, and then at 7 o'clock I'll be meeting with them and take them through a little bit about WIS. So. Oh, and I can't forget, we do have the Memorial Day Fair coming up for both of us, so the fair is back, so.
Okay, so I've got my own. So just a few things quickly. Along literacy, we had our first Battle of the Books, where students signed up in teams. They had to read a series of books, and they were asked questions about those books, and it was a competition. We also had our PTO book fair back in person. That's kind of been the theme, back to normal. For sustainability, I am really proud of what the students are doing in these 2 courtyards. The one on the left is the pollinator garden. The student government has planted both. They do perennials in there, and then they also plant sunflowers every year. We also have a camera. I want to thank Dan DeVito's team and Mike Del Mastro's team, because they've done some stuff with some wiring and some installation. So we have cameras in both courtyards. The courtyard on this side is more of a bird sanctuary. We have bird houses and bird feeders with cameras. The bird feeder will snap a picture. It's attached to an app, and it will identify the bird. So it's just the excitement just among the teachers and the students getting involved. We haven't fully rolled it out yet, but it is up and working. At least there are parts of it that are. The other real return to normal for us is the return of field trips. So last week we had 7th graders go to Adventure Park, where they did a lot of social and emotional team building activities. Tomorrow and Wednesday we have 6th graders going to Soundwaters in Stamford. They already had the in-class lesson where the Soundwaters staff members came here and taught them about life and the importance of Long Island Sound. And tomorrow they get to do some hands-on experiences with that. We also are having our first in-person career fair for our 8th graders this Friday, with a lot of support from the parent community who are coming in to speak about the different careers to the 8th graders. And I also just want to say how proud we are of our team it was an all-female 8th grade group that went to Dallas, Texas in early May for the VEX Robotics World Championships. So we were very proud of them as well. And I think I've spoken enough.
So the beauty of being able to go last is that I get to illustrate the connections all the way down the line. And Dan forgot to talk about something, so add that to my list. I think you sense a theme of around sustainability and Earth Day and recycling and all of these environmental issues, and that continues at the high school. We've been so proud of the work of our green team under the direction of Mike Aikenhead and Andy George. Wonderfully committed staff members who just on the regular are planning amazing things for our kids And I just want to highlight their tree plenish activity. This year, the green team, they set a goal to sell 150 saplings. And ultimately, they sold 350 trees, which is amazing and was, one of the highest tallies, I think, nationally for this program. So we continue to be incredibly proud of them, and we know that we have students coming up who will be able to feed this program. In addition, we also had programming on Earth Day that was planned and organized by teachers who really have a passion in this area, and so all of the students at Weston High School were able to engage in real instruction around environmental issues on Earth Day itself, which was just phenomenal. I think what Dan is thinking of is just last week, May 4th, last week, 2 weeks ago. Gosh, time flies. We were able to, for the second time, bring back the Rising Freshman Forum. And that is an event that we were able to plan in collaboration with ADAP. And a shout out to Sonia Stack for her efforts in helping us to bring that back, as well as to the members of the ADAP board. So we hosted at the high school all 8th graders and their parents for a program around substance use. And we presented some of the information that was presented here regarding our recent drug and alcohol survey, as well as a lot of information about some of the impacts, both biological, social, and legal impacts for students who begin to engage in substance use at a young age. So a really informative program, and we've had great feedback about it, and we hope it will be something we can continue in the years to come. I also have to mention that just this past Friday, we held our junior-senior prom at the Amber Room in Danbury. It was the most highly attended prom in many years for Weston High School, and our students had a wonderful evening, lovely time, and it was just such a nice thing to see them all together again, over 300 students there, and enjoying each other's company. And I will just wrap up by saying, yes, we feel like things are returning to some sense of normalcy, and we're so glad to have our students able to enjoy these moments together.
It's wonderful. Thank you. Anything else? No? Okay. Little housekeeping. So our regularly scheduled June meetings was for the 20th, and I think that we are going to try to move this for a number of reasons. There's a lot going on during those couple of weeks, so we're trying to fit it in probably a week before, maybe on the 14th.
Yes, that's correct. When we had the 20th, then we realized it's the moving up ceremony at the middle school. So then we thought we would have it on the Monday before. That's the award ceremony at the high school, and it's, June is filling up. So and I should also mention that June 6th is our special recognition board meeting that is here when the students across the district are honored for a variety of awards. So we're looking to move the regular session to June 14th, that Tuesday,
Yeah.
if possible.
Another housekeeping question. There was some question about a rain date for graduation, and then there was a PTO survey that went out about that. Is there still going to be a rain date for graduation in the event that it rains on the 21st of June?
The high school administration will be addressing that and make communication tomorrow to parents. Thank you.
So I think we haven't checked that date with everyone, so hopefully that date works. So I think Jody will be
The 14th.
the 14th. Yeah, yeah, okay. And I think that's it for this evening. Anything else from anyone?
Do we have to go through committee reports?
Yeah, anything from the committees? I mean, we heard from communication. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
No, we talked about it.
we can do it again.
The
if
one
you'd
thing
like.
I would say is that I think it's very nice that the recognitions are in person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
That's always very, very special.
And just so you know, I've already started getting texts from people saying, yes, they're watching it live. Yes, hybrid, so.
Okay, good. There you
We'll
go.
take a tally, see how that goes.
Yeah, I guess anything from curriculum? We went through the, yeah, we went through the update. Nothing from finance and operations, kind of, we went through everything that we had on our meeting, pretty much. Policy, anything?
I noticed our second read wasn't on the agenda, so we'll just push that to June, but let's make sure we do our second read of our last,
Which one was this? This was
Policy.
the,
I can speak to that a little bit. I'm sorry. The reason that it is not there is just because we did change language. However, in looking back in the last time it was reviewed for more than just the inclusive language, Ms. Edwards and I spoke about some other things that we think might have to be tweaked in it, so we want to bring
Okay.
it back.
oh,
to
all right, so we'll
policy.
discuss it at the next policy committee.
Exactly.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so that's why it's been kind of tabled, because I don't want to just go forward with the inclusive language if there's a couple
With
of other things that
substantive
might have
issues.
to be tweaked to
Okay.
adequately reflect the current situation.
anything else? No? Okay. With that, can I have a motion to adjourn? Is it too early? Should we, okay. Okay, all in favor? All right, okay. Meeting adjourned.